Hello, ladies and gents that are watching the DKW show today. Happy Sunday. We've got a fab show for you today. We're talking town or country. Now, does your postcode affect your standard of living? Is it more expensive to live in one postcode than the other? Well, that's what we're going to be talking about in today's DKW show, but I'm not alone. I've got my fantastic co-hosts with me, and I've got this video coming up telling us what we're going to be doing in today's show. So take a look at this. So ladies, my question to you is this. What would be your dream or ideal postcode? So who wants to go first?
Everyone's looking at me, so I'll start first. For me, I love London, and I think I'd always want to live in London.
So you're a city girl?
I am, and a lot of people say, oh no, when you get older, you're going to change your mind, etc. But I just love, because I lived in the Caribbean for about 3 years, and I think it's great for holidays.
Right.
But I don't think I'd ever want to live there again. It's just it was quite slow pace, and you know when you make a complaint here, you see like the whole procedure happening, and something's going on. Whereas there, it's kind of like it gets lost, and everyone's into Caribbean lifestyle and coconut drinking under the tree, chilling out. Do you know what I mean? To get your house done, to get everything sorted is just so difficult over there. To get anything moving, it really is.
Really?
I'll stick with London.
So you stick with London?
Yeah.
How about you, Di? You're next.
I don't have a dream postcode. When I travel London and I see certain areas, I think, this could be a nice place to live, and this could be a nice place to live. So not something specific, but...
Wouldn't you consider the countryside at all?
My mum lives in the country, and no.
Okay. Marina, tell me, what do you prefer?
I actually love London.
Oh, you're another city lady.
Yes, but certain areas of London I would not like to live in.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Well then, that boils into our next thing, which is our green card, red card game. We're going to pick your brains and find out why with some of these things. As you know, traditionally, red means no, green means yes, and I'm allowed to be on the fence.
Gosh, I thought you changed this year, Jen. Come on.
It's not part of one of my resolutions, but you never know. So the first question is, do you think your postcode affects who you are? Green card, yes.
Without
Red
a
card,
doubt.
no.
Yes.
Are you serious? Do you know what?
Without a doubt.
No, seriously, ladies, who wants to go first and say why? Why green card?
I think it does, because I remember when I lived in Hackney. Actually, I was raised in Hackney in the 70s, and I loved Hackney then.
Yeah.
And then I had all my children. They were all born in Hackney.
Yeah.
And then I had my son.
Mm-hmm.
And when my son was about 10, Hackney changed.
Right.
And in the area where we lived, it was so bad that I needed to move out, because I looked at my son, I said, well, I don't want him to be hanging around those boys that I see out there taking drugs and cussing people down. I don't want my son to be that way.
Right.
I need to move him out of Hackney, and I did.
But then my thing is, I picked red card because I was born in Islington and I was raised in Hackney, and I think I turned out pretty all right. And I've gone through different boroughs, back in, back out, and I always find myself going back into Hackney. And for me, Hackney now is one of the most up and coming boroughs in London. I love Hackney, especially when I'm going through Dalston. So I think, wouldn't you argue that some people would say it's more to do with the friendship groups that he had than opposed to the actual area?
No. I love Hackney. My parents still do live in Hackney.
Yeah.
Certain areas of Hackney, excellent, lovely, beautiful. I can't actually afford to buy a house in Hackney now.
Yeah, it's quite expensive.
Quite expensive. However, certain parts of Hackney, it's not very good to raise your children, to raise your family. You can get drawn in with the wrong crowd.
Yeah.
You can send your children to the wrong school in Hackney.
Yeah. Well, do you know what? On that note, I mean, it does say that according to our poll, 60% of the viewers did agree. They went green card on this. They said that your area or postcode rather, does affect your standard of living?
Yeah,
or the way you're brought
I
up?
think it's about environment. You know, I think whatever environment you're in, it's going to affect you or influence you in some way.
Okay.
Whether it influences you for the better to say, I'm going to get out of this and I'm not going to be like these people, or you say, do you know what, everyone's doing it, so I'm going to do it. Your environment does affect you. Friendships affect you, your environments affect you. Like, for example, one of the clients that I work with is in a very rich and prestigious area, and I go there and it kind of opens up my vision a lot of the time. And every time I go and see her, because everyone's got a standard of living, they sort of fight to keep that standard of living.
Right.
Is that good or bad? It brings a lot of pressure to put all their kids into private school, etc., but it makes her work hard. And then I look at that and I think, yeah, I'm going to work hard so that I can obtain that as well.
Yeah.
Whereas maybe if I wasn't surrounded with that, I wouldn't have such a high vision for myself.
Fair enough.
I
So
think
then
it does affect you.
My next thing is this, because you mentioned the whole thing with children. Do you think it's better for children to grow up in the countryside then, where it's a more slower pace of life, where perhaps culturally it might be slightly different in terms of environment? Green card, yes. Red card, no. And I can see Di shaking her head profusely. I'm like, no.
I wish I could do green card and just be different, but I just don't. You know, when I think of countryside, I just think of like no internet reception, all that stuff. And I know that's not. I know that's not how it is.
So not
But that
fair.
is just. And for me, I just think, oh gosh, you know.
It depends on what, honestly speaking, I really, you know what, actually, before I go into my opinion, Di, you were the one shaking your head. Why would you say no? Because your mum lives in the countryside.
That's right, she does. And people think countryside, oh, it's all calm and it's all nice. But just like Verena was saying, in certain areas, you have certain things that go on. The countryside can be worse than Hackney. Why? Because, you know, people think that nothing's happening there, but sometimes it's the actual pothole for everything to actually happen.
Right.
So not all the time. My brother, you know, has grown up there, and no, definitely not. When I see him, you know, and some of the things that he does, there's no difference to being in, you know, London.
Well, let's go to the street interviews and find out what the people on the streets of London thought about their area codes.
Does your area code affect identity?
Yeah, I think it does, yeah, definitely.
Why do you think that?
Well, I mean, it says where you're from and where you live, and I mean, there's differences in the areas where you live, I guess, right?
As in terms of location, like, I think yes, it does. Like, for instance, in the city, you know, there are more jobs there. It's easier to commute. That's what I think as well.
I think yes, it affects a lot because people. It depends on which area they live. Like as you said, in countryside or in the city itself, people they identify themselves. They try to be integrated in the group of people with whom they feel comfortable more. You know, like in the city, and they got like more common things to share about.
Well, I don't think so. Personally speaking, I don't think this affects my identity.
What do you think makes a home a home?
I think where kind of family is and yeah, how, like, where you feel cozy, I think.
Few words, family, you get to feel safe, basically.
Well, definitely it's a family. Your surroundings, who's around you. Like I would consider my family is here, even though my family is not here. But my family member is here, so I would say that yeah, my family would be here. And home is where you feel yourself like more comfortable, and you get used to the culture. You get used to feel like home. You don't think like you don't feel that feeling that are you somewhere like in foreign countries, especially for us like foreigners. I would feel that home is where the family is. Yeah.
Well, I think that personally speaking, your home is not the place where you're living, but just how you feel. So my home, as I came from Italy, is just where I feel more comfortable.
Do you think children should grow up in the countryside?
Especially London is such a big, like, it's really like metropolitan city, so you would consider it a bit noisy and it gets really distracted, especially for kids. And when you get like, when you are surrounded with people like, with a small group of people like your family members or like grandparents, especially when they live outside the city. So But in terms of education, I would say that especially it's good to live in the city because you get to see a lot.
No, I think as long as there's some green around, I guess there's always a good thing.
I think that the only thing that a kid needs is a family that can take care of him, and that's it. I don't think.
I think that's a tough one because, I mean, one of the benefits of children growing up in the countryside is the fact that they get to experience, the quiet life, and also, perhaps be easy to commute to the seaside, possibly.
So, we were having a little bit of a giggle during the street interviews there and talking. But ladies, I've got another question for you. Do you think in certain areas you have better schooling?
Definitely.
You didn't even raise your card there. Ladies, why would you say that? What do you think that, it's better to live in a certain postcode because then your kids can go to a better school? Do you think better postcodes have better schooling than others?
Yes,
I do.
definitely.
But that doesn't mean it stops a child from achieving. I don't believe if you're going to a less prominent school, you can still achieve high standards. Mm-hmm. But yes, definitely.
Do you know? But you've got to work hard as a child. If you are bright and you're going to a school with less facilities, the teachers are less able. Then you would need to really work really hard to get to where you want to go within that school.
Yeah.
And I know a guy, he actually moved home so that his child could get into a certain school. Right. And the thing is, I think he did that because sometimes people judge you on where you live. So maybe it's not even something that you want to do within yourself, but you are judged. And that's the thing, he wanted his child to have a better opportunity, to go to the right school I say, and then to have better opportunities, because it's who you know again. Yeah.
So do you think, sorry, just before we go into the break, because we're running out of time, do you think there's a certain stigma or prejudice against certain postcodes?
Definitely. Without a doubt.
Without the green. No one raised their card, afterwards, definitely. Why do you think that is? Who wants to answer this question before we go to the break? Why do you think that is? Shouldn't you think that people shouldn't be judged on their postcodes?
It's the news, isn't it? A lot of the time, if you think about an area which is, say, underprivileged or has a lot of crime, if you see that in the news all the time, if I was to be a parent, I wouldn't necessarily want my child to go to a school in that area or even to be raised in that area, or I wouldn't want to be associated with that area. You don't want to be associated with something negative if you're not that sort of... And that's just how it is. If people hear, you're from that, can anything good come out of that area?
I hear that all the time when I say I come from my area. Oh, wow, you come from that area. There's a lot of gun crime there.
How do you survive?
Like, well, what area
do you put up with that?
Yeah.
Well,
what area do you come from? Yeah.
Well, we're going to go more into this, and we have a special guest who's going to be coming on after the break, the lovely Sue Eccleston, who's going to talk about refurbs, property development, and just life under the hammer. We're going to tickle her brains with some questions, so stay tuned. You don't want to miss this one.
This is your UCKG timetable. We are open 7 days a week, helping you to make a new beginning. Mondays, a meeting focused on achieving more in your financial life. Tuesdays, prayers for healing. Wednesdays, a meeting teaching you to develop in your spiritual life. Thursdays, a special prayer for the family. Friday, a service for your spiritual deliverance. Saturdays, Find the One, a service specifically tailored for your love life. Sundays. Reconnect with God, the main meeting for your spiritual strength.
Do the maths. Changing your life is not as simple as changing your hairstyle, your shirt, or rearranging the furniture in your living room. You're talking about years of deep-rooted habits, behaviours and problems that are not going to change overnight. Many may say, think positively, but the trouble with that is that you can't do or change anything with just thoughts. But add action into the equation and the outcome can be different. Let's do the maths. Positive thinking plus action equals a change. Whatever it is, if the change is significant, if it's worthwhile, then it will have to take time, effort and homework from you.
Hello and welcome to DKW. Again, we have the lovely Sue Eccleton with us. It's such a privilege to have you on our show today.
Thank you very much for saying so.
So, we've been talking property areas. Is it good to live in one? Schooling, the kids, your title, whether it has an effect on the way you look, how people perceive you. Before we go into our questions for you, what do you think about everything that was said?
Massively. It massively affects everything. Every aspect of your life. It can affect you. It can affect your car insurance prices. It will affect you. And I picked up very much on something that you said, which is that people moving for schools. I've got a property portfolio, and one of the most frequent reasons for me losing very, very good tenants is that they want to move so their children can actually put their names down at a better school, a school where the SATs results are that much better.
Yeah.
Wow.
Now, whether or not that's right or wrong, that's people's perception, and that's what happens.
Yeah.
So then, Sue, I wanted to find out from you, how did you get into property development? Because you've been in this industry for quite some time.
40 years.
Wow.
I'm in my 40th year now. Well over 100 property refurbishments, full property refurbishments.
100?
Yeah, I've been doing this since I was 17. And I fell into it completely by accident. I grew up on a council estate, not a great postcode, right? Not a fabulous postcode, but I grew up on a council estate, and I had this thing from when I was very, very young that I wanted to own my own home. It was a security thing, I think. Yeah. And so I struggled and I saved and I bought my first house. It took me 2 years to save up a £600 deposit, bless me. I look back now and I think, oh, Lord. But no, that's how long it took. And I bought a house and I was so proud. I got a real bounce on me.
It's a big achievement.
It was. And then the hell hit. It was the worst house you could possibly have imagined.
Oh dear.
It was in the days when they did something called a drive-by survey, which if the address existed, they would lend you money. I'm going back into the 70s now.
Wow.
No, you won't remember. But I'm going back into the 70s where things were wholly different. It was a lot easier to get a mortgage and do this sort of thing. And I bought the house from hell, and then I spent 3 years where I wouldn't let any of my family come anywhere near it.
Wow.
I was so ashamed because I'd thought I'd achieved something that was fantastic, that nobody in my family had ever done. And I moved in and the heating was broken, the flue was broken, the boards had gone, the joists were gone, there was plaster, it was damp. I'd managed to buy the only house in the street probably without a back door. That's how observant I was. Yeah.
Do you think you were more focused on, I want to buy a house?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
I was a kid.
Just didn't know what to look for.
No. People still don't.
Yeah.
Trust me, people still don't.
Yes.
And so I had no money. Everything that I got, I mean, literally every penny, had gone into buying this house. I got no money. I had no skill set. I thought I did, but I really didn't. And the only thing I got was a set of hands, and I used to save up money to buy a bag of plaster and that sort of stuff, and I would save up to buy materials, and it took me 3 years to turn that house around. But At the end of that 3 years, I doubled the price of the house.
Wow.
Amazing. It's
And it went
amazing.
from 6,250 to something like 12,200.
Wow.
And I moved. And I thought, well, if I'm buying for 12,200, all I can afford to do is buy in the same street. I don't really want to do that. So I thought I'll buy another wreck, knowingly this time, and I'll have another go. And then when I'd finished that one was, I bought that for 14, sold it for 21. And then I went again and again. And before I knew where I was in property refurbishment.
That's great.
Wow.
Can I ask you, Sue, do you think anyone can sort of develop their home or not?
Anyone can learn to ride a bike, but not everybody's going to make the Tour de France.
I like that. That's a good one.
I've got to be careful what I say here. I say anybody can paint a door, actually. Not everybody can. But there's this assumption that if people say, well, can anybody refurbish a house? That's the assumption that you're actually asking people to roll their sleeves up and get in there and actually do stuff themselves. When you look at the party of refurbishment, we all bring a lot of different things to the party, and sometimes the best way to refurbish a property is to be able to stand back from it, organise it, see to the budget, make sure that the deadlines are met. It's not all about whether or not you can wield a hammer or hold a drill.
Right.
It's about imagination, and it's about keeping a tight rein on finance. Can anybody refurbish a house? Yes, but in different ways. Some people aren't suited though.
But when you say different ways, could you elaborate more? Like
different ways. You don't have to be plastering it yourself in order to refurbish property.
Right.
Providing maybe you're astute, maybe you can actually get the builds in, maybe you know what to look for, maybe you know how to control the budget. Somebody else might be very, very good at actually physically doing the stuff themselves, and the project overruns by 6 weeks and costs them an awful lot of money. There's a lot of different aspects to property refurbishment.
Say like me now, who I don't know what to look for in the area, in the house, developing the property. What would be 5 tips that you would give me?
Okay. First thing is to take your time a little bit and do some homework, and also educate yourself to start with. You must educate yourself. An interesting fact is that people generally take 4 times longer deciding on what car they want to buy than they do about a house purchase.
No way.
It's absolutely shocking.
Yeah.
But if you think, what are you spending on a car? Maybe between £5,000 and £15,000. But when you're purchasing a house, you're going in, you're laying down maybe 30, 40, £50,000 deposit, which you've spent heaven knows how long accruing that money, and then you're putting yourself into a mortgage debt for the next 25 years for maybe another 200,000. So we're talking £250,000 here. Very often that decision is made in the first 15 minutes of walking through a door.
Wow.
So you need to be astute. You need to educate yourself. When you're looking for a house, don't go for what I call the Jack and Vera effect, which is, remember Jack and Vera in Coronation?
Yeah.
And they had the clad house. There's actually nothing wrong with a clad house, but it looked wrong in the street.
Right.
Don't go for something that looks too different. It means they've messed around with the genre of the house, the general ambience of the house. Always make sure that you can actually manage any works that needs to be done. Make sure that you are happy to live there for a period of time.
Right.
And when you move in there, just sit in it. Just get to know, get to learn how to love the house. All these things you need to consider when you're looking for a house. It's all about price, budget, location, and making sure that people mustn't take on too much at their first bite.
One thing I did want to ask you, do you think people have gone into a whole frenzy of like property development as a hobby as opposed to a very, very serious matter?
It's the nation's sickness. You can switch the TV on at any given hour of the day, and somewhere you can find a property programme. You can put them on I'm an insomniac, I know. You can find them at 4 in the morning, 2:30. You can find some programme about refurbishment or just sourcing a property at the coast or living abroad. We are a bit obsessive about property in this country, and yet we are amazingly ignorant about its nature for it to be so much in the frontal lobe of our very being. We're obsessed with it, and yet we don't seem to gen ourselves up on it. We don't seem to know an awful lot about it.
So then do you think there's a particular area in which someone should invest in a property? Say if they wanted to start off on the property ladder, maybe they're a young couple, they're looking for their first home? Do you think there's certain areas, or do you think they should go for the city, or should they go for the countryside?
Well, I'm a country girl who went to live in the city who's gone back to the country. Right. I'm quite used to it being very dark at night, and the sound of sheep, and some people it just doesn't float their boat. They can't cope with that. I've got a friend actually who won't stay at mine past 6 o'clock because she hates the fact there's no street lights.
Right.
Yeah, it's quite scary because you're just so used to the city. And
well, she can't find a car. Yeah. I have to walk her to the car at all. She can't find
With
a
your
car.
night vision,
she won't find a car around. The trick is, if you want to actually profit from property, you don't buy from the top drawer.
Okay.
The way to make money in property is to buy sensibly, buy wisely, refurbish, which is what I do, renovate, add value to it, and then actually reap the pickings from that. However, what I'd say to people is, if you buy in an area where the peak has already been reached or there's a level already reached, look around the peripheral area and see what is available. And the way to often look for that is to look in local offices, your council offices, for local planning applications, things. There are areas that are being brought up. You know, you saw it down here in London with the Olympic Village and stuff like that.
Was
you look
incredible.
at areas where things are coming up, and that will actually put an awful lot in your pocket for you doing nothing. So don't necessarily buy in areas at their peak. Buy around the edges of those areas where you can benefit from other stuff that's being brought into the area.
So auction properties are not a good investment then?
Auction properties can be an extremely good investment.
Really? Why?
Because very often they go for what they go for. However, you've got to always bear in mind that you've got to complete on that auction property within 4 weeks of the auction. And you must take time to read the legal pack, and you also must understand that you may go into some expense to actually check out the substance of that property and the integrity of that property, and then you may fail at auction. You may not get it. If you do bid at auction, don't sit at the front of the room. Sit to the side or the back so you see who else is bidding. Do your homework. Check out on various property sites what property's being sold for in very recent months. Stick a limit and don't go above it, because you're asking for trouble.
So I've got a big question for you, because you said your first home you made mistakes. You didn't know what to look for.
Oh God, yeah.
Right, now you see,
and I've done it since.
You see in the city like that we live in London, there's so many new builds nowadays, and they're so attractive and modern and luxurious. You know, we don't know what to look for. I'm sure you guys don't know either. And you look at them, like, I look at them and I think, amazing.
I don't like them.
And you know, don't you like them? And
I don't like them.
For like, say, $500,000, etc. What's your take on those? And secondly, what are we missing, you know, when we're looking for a house?
In the 1960s, tower blocks looked absolutely amazing to people who were living in back-to-back houses, and they look lovely, and we are now blowing them up and reducing them to rubble. What you've got to watch is that they're actually in good parts of the city, that if one bad apple in a block can ruin the whole block. People have to be very aware that there are extensive service charges within these things. However, those service charges will also cover repairs to the main building, and they will cover your house insurance. So you're paying charges, but there's some stuff that you may not be paying because you're and there's a certain type of living that I think people outgrow apartments, and I think apartments are for now. I see many people who've lived in the same house for 35 years. I don't see many people who've lived in the same apartment for more than 15.
Very good point.
I think apartments are transient. Now, you have to watch the market and make sure that you can actually turn that apartment around and sell it on, and make sure that you can actually get rid of it, because apartments are notoriously less easy to sell than a house with a garden. And you know what they say, you know, how do you make God laugh? Tell her what your plans are. Because, you know, these things happen whilst you're planning something else, and children come along, your change in lifestyle, change of work, change of location. It's a lot more difficult to maybe turn an apartment out than it is a house. And if children do come along unexpectedly, I think maybe a third floor apartment is no longer ideal. You've got to plan for the unexpected.
I feel like renting now after
Yeah.
Excellent points, though.
I've got property you can rent.
We'll talk after.
So it's been an absolute pleasure
And it's
having
been-
you on.
it's been for me as well.
Wish the segment was a bit longer and so on. How can we find some more information about you?
Refurbexpert.com. I'm based in Birmingham, but I speak all around the country. I speak from Scotland down to Brighton. I'm nicknamed the Refurb Queen. I never gave myself that. But refurbexpert.com, you can find me there. You can find out about all the work that I do to educate people. I run courses in refurbishment and basic viewing. First-time buyers need to learn how to view a house, so they don't get themselves in a pickle on the first rung of the ladder, because that will kill your property life. So refurbexpert.com is where you can find me.
Brilliant stuff. Thank you. Absolute pleasure.
No, thank you. Thank you all.
And we'll be back after the break with some more tips on how you can make your home the sweetest home ever. So stay tuned.
This is your UCKG timetable. We are open 7 days a week, helping you to make a new beginning. Monday, a meeting focused on achieving more in your financial life. Tuesday, prayers for healing. Wednesday, a meeting teaching you to develop in your spiritual life. Thursday, a special prayer for the family. Friday, a service for your spiritual deliverance. Saturday, Find the One, a service specifically tailored for your love life. Sunday, Reconnect with God, the main meeting for your spiritual strength.
Hello, students. Are you ready to learn about love? Yes? So let's learn to love intelligently. I've never seen poor people say, I hate money. You know what? Money is just a piece of paper.
In the lobster today, I learned so many things today. It was quite insightful, really helpful, straight to the point.
Someday you feel in love with this person. Some days you want to strangle that person. Easier said than done because you're not practicing love with your brain. Why buy the cow if you can get milk for free? She's the only woman for you in the world, and she's going to be always a happy woman, treat you well, and there will be lots of milk as well.
I have a good time here, very nice. I feel happy.
It was brilliant, it was like I've learned a lot about love.
We love Love School!
If you weren't here, get the DVD, get the book, invest in your love life. Oh, you want to eat? You want food? Okay. Take us to a restaurant.
Learned a lot. Actually can't wait for the DVD to come out because there's so many points that I wasn't able to like note down. But when the DVD comes out, I'm gonna get the DVD and watch it over and over again.
Hello, and we're back. I've got Dawn Evans. Dawn, it's lovely to have you on the show. Let us know a little bit about the work that you do and who you are.
Okay, I'm an interior designer. I've been in the industry for 2 years.
Right.
I design residential homes and retail.
Okay.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit more about your work. I mean, retail, residential, what's the difference?
The difference between residential is personalised to the home, and retail is more a commercial base, so you're kind of branding for retail.
For example, I've come to you, I want you to design my home for me because it's a residential and everything. So which room do we start with first, and then how do you work along the floor plan?
Okay, to work along the floor plan, you would start at the entry, which is the entry of the home.
Right.
Welcome to my home. This is my hallway. This is, to me, is the most important part of the home. My home, obviously, you can see is quite large. I use this as my work home office. So this is where I will store my work, any details, books. I have shelving up here. Mainly because of storage, but these are actually my picture shelves that I changed and used them for books. I have a lovely mirror here. This kind of reflects, I have mirrors all over my home. It kind of reflects back and introduces more space. I've kind of gone with a colour of sepia based on a picture I have in my living room. My design inspiration for the living room is Breakfast at Tiffany's with Audrey Hepburn. She had flair in the film. She had flair. She had class. She used to wear pearls and sort of crystals. So that's my inspiration for the home. That's where I thought a chandelier would be good. I also have one in my bedroom, but we won't be going in there. And her home is very eclectic in Breakfast at Tiffany's, and that's my style. This is a piece of upcycled furniture that I've done. I bought it from a local charity shop, and I colour matched it with my cushions. So I tend to do a lot of upcycling in my home. I really enjoy upcycling. I think it comes from my background in textiles. I love materials. I love interiors and products and furniture. Here's one I made earlier. This is, I had 4 pieces of chairs. I found these actually in my old place. There were 4 of them, but one of them was really worn. They were covered in leather. They all had an old leather covering to it. So basically I took that off. So you have to remove the buttons and replace the buttons. Buy enough fabric. You wouldn't buy a little bit of fabric. I made the mistake of trying to use a pattern from this one, and obviously it wouldn't work because you need space to put inside the fabric inside the holes with the buttons. So I had to redo that, and this is what I got. I bought this fabric. I love this chair. This is like a raspberry satin. I covered the buttons myself, if you can see. So this is basically what this would have looked like, that, but this is much nicer. Instead of going for the traditional pin tacking, I went for like a more modern contemporary style, which is a bit of trimming, raspberry trim in a diamante. How I got into interior design was basically my stepfather was a painter and decorator, and he used to love drawing and painting, and I picked that up. I think I had it within me anyway. And I studied art and design years ago, and then I went into textile design and progressed into interior design, which I love. I love interiors. I love furniture. I love old furniture. Interior design to me is about making a home, reflecting your personality within your home. And I believe that some people have the ability to do that themselves, and some people need help through an interior designer to do that, to bring their personality out onto paper, into the concept, and then into their home.
So how would you give people ideas on designs and concepts and so on?
Okay, so you could use the internet. Google is an excellent source for inspiration in the sense of colours, in the sense of what's in now, trending, what's going on in the world, what new furniture is available. It actually depends on what you like, what sort of furniture you like.
Right.
Yeah.
Brilliant. So my last final question is, how do I get an interior designer? So if someone needs help with decor, needs help with planning their actual floor space and mapping things out, how do they get into contact with an interior designer?
They would go on to the interior design forum, any interior design forum, or they would go on the industry page and see if they can source a registered interior designer.
Right, so they have to be registered.
Well, it depends on what you want. If you want someone that's gone to college or gone to university and got their degrees, then that's the best route for you. If you want a professional finish on your design, then you know that if you hire someone with qualifications, that's what you're going to get, is a finished brand new product.
Thank you so much, Dawn. It was an absolute pleasure having you on. And before we go to the break, take a look at this Inspire Me video.
Moving to a new country was a bit overwhelming. My husband's job is what brought us over to the UK. Clearly, I'm from America, as you can hear, from the South in Tennessee. And, there was purpose in the move immediately for him, and that the job brought him over. But for me, I had to give up quite a bit. And so my background is that I'm a lawyer from the U.S. And moving over, I had a lot of negative voices. Why on earth would you give up your lucrative job? What are you doing? What are you going to do over there? There were a lot of conversations around me in terms of what are you going to do? How are you going to pursue your dreams? And you're in this country. You're not from here. You clearly don't sound like everyone else. But one of the things that I always wanted to do was to help promote, inspire, and equip other women. Through volunteering here, I then was offered the position to become chief executive of the very charity that I love and hold so dear. It's called Dress for Success, and we help underprivileged women transition back into the workplace by giving them interview attire and training. And so part of what I had to do was to deal with the own internal fear that I had. I had always had a background in pageantry, and I knew that it was something that I wanted to pursue in terms of the beauty industry, entertainment, acting, presenting, and such. And so going on auditions and even getting signed here in the UK was quite a daunting task, because I sound a little different than everyone else. And so just overcoming the fears and learning to shut out the voices of negativity just because it was different and I was using my background and skill set in a different way. I had a lot of people that either didn't understand it, but they do now. So there's nothing that overcomes fear like success. And there's no better feeling than helping a woman sort of turn the corner, if you will, onto the transition of low self-esteem to self-sufficiency and believing in herself. We deal with a very sensitive population, a lot of women who have survived domestic violence, human trafficking, and the instant transformation that you see in someone that walked in that couldn't look you in the eye, and then you turn them around in the mirror and they see themselves for the first time in a way that they haven't in years, and the transformation is instant, and it reminds me of the women that helped mentor me when I had challenging times in my life. I've been made redundant, I've been downsized before, as many of us have, and so I know what they face and how they feel, and so it's incredibly fulfilling to be able to pay that forward, because no one succeeds in a bubble. We all have somebody there to say something encouraging to us, and kindness is free. You'd be surprised the effect you can have on people when you meet them at a certain place in their life.
I get motivated to kickstart life again. That motivation that just pushes me for the rest of the week. So it's like a boost.
It gave me that hope. You know, it gave me something to look forward to.
I felt welcomed. The environment it's hard to explain, but I felt at peace. It's home.
Sometimes, in order for you to get to the place that you want to be, it's important just to take that little step.
They didn't judge me from what background I came from. I felt like I belonged.
One of the greatest things is, you know, you get to meet new people. Maybe, hopefully, I might get to see you there.
Uplifting.
Diverse.
Vibrant. Dynamic.
Powerful.
Youthful. Informative.
Energizing. Passionate.
Motivational.
Freedom. Lively.
Excitement.
We're back with today's show. The ladies weren't even ready. They're too busy talking about marriage and surnames and stuff and the property ladder. But you know, ladies, I mean, considering everything that you've heard with property and interior design and, you know, schooling and affects the way you're perceived, the way that you've seen and so on. I've got a report here that says a recent study showed that 1 in 5 pupils were on free school meals, but only 1 in 100 Oxbridge entrants were, and 7% of children that attend independent schools. But public schools provide more than half the chief executives of Britain's top companies and 70% of High Court judges. Do you think snobbery in employment exists? And that obviously is surrounding your postcode.
Yeah, of course it does.
Yeah.
You know, we'll be really naive to think it does not exist. It does. Because, you know, if you're working out there, you see it all the time, every day. You could apply for a job in a company, depending on which company. You go for an interview, you see it, it's all around you.
Yeah, so now I work in a completely different industry. I work in media, but I've always worked in insurance and corporate, and we used to recruit pretty much the same type of person. And if you don't fit that criteria from first interview, you're not going to get a second.
Wow.
And you know, a lot of the time, the people that used to work for our particular company were sons of a director. If it wasn't for our company, it was another insurance firm, and it was their son that had come over. It's like, oh, I know Andrew, oh, I know John, oh, that's his son coming in. And they would get the job just because of who their parents were. So yeah, there is a lot of snobbery. And a lot of the time you could be skilled, but it's about trust as well with employment, you know, sometimes. And with these companies, it's just how it is sometimes, you know.
But
don't look the part or act the part.
I'm so sorry to interrupt, but my thing is that it's talking about schooling, and, you know, normally these independent and more private establishments and so on, they are in a certain postcode. However, it's saying that most of these people that are doing very, very well in society, like 70% of high court judges were in public schools, and public schools usually tend to be in poorer or less affluent areas. You know, they've now got the job. So do you think that even though there is snobbery, that the postcode then does not really affect
Do you know what it is?
Succeeding?
People that go to private school probably started their own business and multi-millionaires.
I can't believe she said that.
That's why they're not CEOs of a company.
Oh, you're just so wrong.
I know. You're so terrible. I'm winding you up here, but no, you know, that's great. It's great. You know, it shows that what Diane said, if you apply yourself, but it could just be that later on in life they were able to network differently. Because I know that Verena always talks about when she did the bar and the people that she was associating with, and a lot of the time, I think in life it's about your sort of perseverance, but also it's about who you network with, and you have to be prepared. If you want to be a high court judge, for instance, I know for a fact you cannot be networking with, you know, any Tom, Dick and Harry and expect to get into that profession. Of course. Forget about it. So maybe they did go to public school, but they made a decision, I'm going to network with this person, I'm going to get to know that person, I'm going to apply myself in that way so that I can get into this.
But there are quite good public schools. We're not saying that public schools are not an asset to society and you can't get the best education if you go to a public school. We're not saying that, but what we're saying is some areas you can get really bad schools in some areas, and you should, if you're trying to educate your children or you're trying to send your children to a good school or give them the best start in life as a parent, then you should avoid these areas because your children will not get into a good school in these areas. But there are some really good public schools. Depending on the area you live in.
Because, you know, for example, a child could go to a private school, for instance, and again, it goes back to environment. I'm talking about environment because the thing is, you can go to a private school, and if you don't watch the sort of friends that they may have, for instance, or the environment that they're associating themselves with, then they too could get onto the wrong path. Do you know what I mean? So you have to, as a parent, I think, and I'm not a parent, but if I was, I would keep an eye on who are my kids hanging out with, what are they interested in, who are they, because that is, the environment will have an influence on them.
It would.
Whether they go to private school or public school.
It would, and I would like to say something on that because, like I said earlier on, when I was raised in Hackney, and my children were born in Hackney, and I remember my two eldest daughters, I send them to schools in Hackney. And they were fine, and the education was fine, and they were brilliant in school. And then my youngest daughter, by the time she was old enough to go to school, to go to secondary school, I couldn't put her in secondary school. Things had moved on to such a bad level at that time that I couldn't actually put her in secondary school in Hackney. I had to actually school her in Enfield, for example.
Wow. So she had to travel all the way out.
Yeah, she was schooled, secondary school in Enfield.
So then my question is this. Do you think that perhaps a postcode or a certain type of living standard, whether it be in the country or in like the city, for example, brings a certain standard of happiness? Because now, you know, we're going from now, you know, not just the schooling and not just the environment. We're talking about happiness, being comfortable, being secure, feeling well within yourself in a particular area. Do you think you have certain postcodes that make you more happy?
Well, have you watched that program on TV? Nightmare Neighbors.
It's true.
Have you watched it?
Because that could take away your inner peace.
It could take away
really
your sanity.
You know, I lived in an area, and you probably remember, I lived in an area where they used to play loud music, like all night. I remember calling the that number they give you.
Oh, environmental health.
Okay, so then they were like, it was after, they're like, no, you've got to wait till it's after 11. Okay, so I used to wait till it's after 11. And then I was like, look, it's midnight and they're still playing this music. Can you please come and tell them to stop? Oh, we haven't got anyone that can come out now. So it was a nightmare for us, and you couldn't get the help that you needed, and you feel like you're just trapped.
Or if they come, they would knock on the door of the people. They'd turn on the music.
As soon as they go.
And as soon as they go, they'll turn the music up again. So your life was just a nightmare.
You know, at the end of the day, you can have inner peace, because some people, they try to move area, or they try to even move country to try to find peace within.
Yeah.
I think that you need to see what the issue is, because if it's an inner peace issue, wherever you move, you're still going to have that inner peace issue.
The neighbours ain't going to make no difference.
The neighbours are not going to make difference. You can be in the best house ever, and if you've got issues, conflicting issues within, you need to sort them within. However, if you are happy, and you're talking about happiness now, and you're in an area which is like, you know, crime-ridden, because I've lived in a sort of area like that, and I've had people smoking drugs on the stairs when I'm going to my house. I've had the neighbour's cat all over the place, her litter. All the peace I had in the world was gone when I got home. And I just thought, do you know what? I can't live in this environment anymore. This is not me, and I had to move. And now I've got peace again.
It is true. She is actually right. She is actually, and I recall those days where you know when we got into our home, it was beautiful. We had everything, a beautiful home and everything. But the area we lived in, it was just horrendous.
Yeah. So, you know, just a final part before I conclude on, because now it kind of branches off them more than just a few bricks and mortar. Now we're going to the actual individual. I mean, do you think like a home is an extension of yourself? Like when people walk into your home, it shows who you are?
Yes, it does.
Definitely. Yeah.
And then if that's the case, then my next question is, do you think then now it's not about the home, but it's now about the person?
It's both.
Yeah.
I think it's both. You know, I think it's I always say, I'm a great advocate for saying to people, you've got to make the best of life and the best of circumstances that you find yourself in. Some people just can't afford to live in Hampstead, or actually, I knew somebody who lived in Highgate. And he was just banging on all the time about how great it is to live in Highgate, and I'm rich, and I'm da-da-da. And he lived in a flat that I would want to live in Highgate.
And the postcode it was.
It's just for the postcode.
It was all for the postcode, and it was just a rundown area, rundown flat, you know. The building wasn't very good, you know, but he was just up about the fact that he lived in that particular area.
And the thing is, going back to your point, I feel that sometimes if you're always trying to keep up with the Joneses, which is what this is, I don't know if you can ever be happy, because you can move to the IT postcode, but tomorrow there could be another IT postcode.
Yes.
You know, or your car will never be big enough. Your kids will never go to the best school. There's
always chasing your tail.
You're always chasing, because, oh, she's got something better. There's always going to be someone that has something better than you, that is prettier than you, that is smarter than you. So if you don't have that consciousness to be happy with what you have and to make the best with what you have, whether that's your looks, if it's your home, if you're not happy with your home and you can't afford to move, then do it up if you can. Do you know what I mean? And I think that that's something that does come from within. Okay, this is what I have. Instead of envying what my neighbours have got and saying, oh, I want that, and getting into debt a lot of the time.
Which is another big problem,
You know, okay, what can I do about this situation? You know, maybe I did grow up in a really underprivileged area, but do you know what? I'm not going to be like these people.
Exactly.
I'm going to go out there and I'm going to do the best, and I'm going to go against the grain.
It's all about your mentality.
And
it's all about your mentality.
I was just even going to say that to conclude, because we're coming to the end of the show, and I don't think it's about town or country or this postcode or another postcode. It's about who you are as an individual, and if you're willing to work hard to be the best that you can be. And when you have that inner strength within you, when you have that inner happiness, whether you are in town or in country, you will always be a success, and your home will be too. Agree, ladies?
Yes,
Agree. It's been a fantastic show. It was an absolute laugh, very educational as well. I feel like getting out a drill and a hammer and doing up my home. But until next Sunday, we'll see you again. From the DKW ladies and myself, have a great day. Bye-bye.
Bye.